All other wisdom is marked by folly, but Jesus is the only person who is altogether lovely. He's stronger than the strongest, wiser than the wisest, sweeter than the sweetest, kinder than the kindest, and better than the best. I recommend him to be your Savior.
For your free copy of Dr. Guido's daily devotional, Seeds from the Sower, write The Sower, Mentor, Georgia, 30439.
Visit us on
VCY America presents Crosstalk, a nationwide call-in program discussing issues that have an effect on our families, our communities, our churches, our nation, and our world. Crosstalk, an opportunity for you to voice your concerns for biblical principles. And now live by satellite and around the world on the internet at vcyamerica.org. Here is today's Crosstalk.
And thank you for joining us for our Friday News Roundup, coming your way here from Crosstalk on VCY America. Many news stories, so much taking place, whether it be the tour that President Trump took through the Middle East or matters happening domestically here as well. Friends, it's happening so very fast, and certainly we take note of these matters. We want to be understanding of the times in which we live and help us to understand also the urgency of reaching many with the gospel in such a time as this. We've got a number of stories here today, but friends, what's obvious, people need the Lord. And as we share some of these stories here today, I trust it will burden our hearts to be ambassadors for the Lord Jesus Christ. I'm going to begin with a story that I find to be absolutely appalling. Absolutely appalling. That's my opinion. CBN News, the former FBI Director James Comey, facing a federal investigation after he posted an image that U.S. officials say appeared to call for the assassination of President Donald Trump. Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem announced yesterday that federal law enforcement is reviewing Comey's Instagram post showing a photo of seashells with the caption, "Cool shell formation on my beach walk." It showed an arrangement of shells into the numbers 8647. Trump administrative officials, including Noem, interpret the message as a reference to kill the President Donald Trump, the 47th president. Friends, many of you know the term 86. We just talked about this in Crosstalk the other day. The term 86 is commonly understood as slang for removing or discarding something or someone, potentially through violence or even murder, to 86 something. And here are the 86 of the 47th President of the United States. The Department of Homeland Security and the Secret Service are investigating this threat, will respond accordingly, Noem said. FBI Director Kash Patel confirmed he had seen the post and was coordinating with the Secret Service and its leadership. Todd Starnes says the Chief of Staff, Taylor Buttigieg, wrote on X, "This is deeply concerning to all of us and is being taken seriously." Senator Tommy Tuberville demanded that Comey face consequences. He said this is a direct threat against President Trump, who's already survived 2 assassination attempts, beyond despicable. James Comey must face consequences, Tuberville wrote on X. And friends, it is just so disingenuous. What is also being reported here, that Comey deleted the image and posted a message saying he was not aware that the numbers 8647 were inappropriate. Ladies and gentlemen, he is the former director of the FBI. And to say that he doesn't know what 86 something is, he knows exactly what 8647 means. He said, "I posted earlier a picture of some shells I saw today on a beach walk, which I assumed were a political message. I didn't realize some folks associate those numbers with violence. It never occurred to me, but I oppose violence of any kind, so I took the post down," he wrote. Friends, in my opinion, that was very disingenuous. The former head of the FBI, in my opinion, knows exactly what those numbers meant to 8647. Matter of fact, as we mentioned just recently on Crosstalk, are you for 86, the abortion kill? Are you for killing 86? Are you ditching this life that's in the mother's womb? Speaking of abortion, I find this also very, very appalling. The story from lifenews.com. It was another record year for the abortion giant Planned Parenthood, killing more babies in abortions than ever before. Think about this, friends. Although Planned Parenthood bills itself as a women's health organization, in reality, it's little more than an abortion business. I know we had a caller the other day just very upset about disparaging Planned Parenthood and all the good that they're doing. Well, look at Planned Parenthood's latest annual report. It was just released. Shows the abortion business killed a record 402,230 babies in abortions in the past year, while generating over $2 billion in revenue. It's a 2.42% increase in the number of babies Planned Parenthood killed in 2023-2024 than it did the prior year, when it killed 392,715 babies in abortions. Now, friends, when you divide that by the number of days in a year, Christmas, Easter, that's over 1,102 babies killed in abortions every single day of the year. 46 dead babies every single hour. By the time this program is finished today, 46 babies will receive a death sentence from Planned Parenthood. It's an insane figure for Planned Parenthood, a company that claims its main focus is merely women's health care. It's a horrific number that's almost difficult to comprehend and far surpasses any genocide in human history. Think about that, friends. Think about this. Over 1,102 babies killed in abortions every single day. It's like this country facing a 9/11 every single day of the year. How long are we going to continue to tolerate this? How long are we going to continue to fund this as well? Friends, we're going to go into more depth on this story next week on Crosstalk and spend a full day dealing with this life issue. But it is totally despicable, it's outrageous, and cannot be tolerated. Planned Parenthood killing more babies in abortions than ever before. LifeNews.com reports Louisiana woman killed her 20-week-old unborn baby with the abortion pill, then threw her baby in a garbage can. That's a shocking story from a pro-life state where officials are pursuing potential charges against a New York abortionist who is violating the state's pro-life law to illegally mail abortion pills to women. Louisiana's Attorney General mentioned the shocking case during testimony in the state legislature. She highlighted New York-based abortionist Margaret Carpenter, who is now under investigation again for selling the abortion pill used to kill the baby. But friends, this talks about depravity. The heart is deceitful above all things. It's desperately wicked. Who can know it? Here you have a mom killing her 20-week-old baby with this abortion pill and then throwing this baby in a garbage can. LifeNews.com reporting a Michigan Court of Claims judge has struck down several pro-life laws designed to protect unborn babies and ensure women's safety, ruling them unconstitutional under the state's 2022 pro-abortion amendment. The decision, handed down Tuesday by Judge Patel, eliminates the 24-hour waiting period, informed consent requirements, restrictions on non-physicians performing abortions, prompting outcry from pro-life advocates who argue these measures safeguard both mothers and their unborn children. The timing of the decision could not be more concerning as the state faces an unprecedented spike in serious complications from abortion, up 38% in just 1 year. Friends, this judge will one day stand before the ultimate judge. LifeNews.com also reporting the South Carolina Supreme Court has unanimously upheld the Fetal Heartbeat and Protection Act that protects the lives of unborn children when a heartbeat is detected, usually by 6 weeks gestational age. What's going on in California, Liberty Counsel issued this release as they filed an amicus brief to the U.S. Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals in the National Institute of Family and Life Advocates versus Bonta, a case where California Attorney General Rob Bonta is attempting to silence pro-life pregnancy centers from informing women about progesterone therapy as a means to reverse the abortion drug mifepristone. Liberty Counsel argues this weaponization of fraud laws to censor pregnancy centers is viewpoint-based discrimination and an unconstitutional restriction on free speech. This includes the right for these pregnancy centers to speak and promote the treatment known as APR. That's abortion pill reversal. And friends, if we disregard life in the womb, we disregard life at the other end of the age spectrum. LifeNews.com reporting New York is on track to become the 11th state to legalize assisted suicide. April 29th, they had an 81-67 vote. The New York Assembly passed the Medical Aid in Dying Act, permitting terminally ill patients to end their lives with a physician's help. The state Senate remains just 7 votes shy of advancing the bill to a floor vote. A 2024 YouGov poll revealed that at least 72% of New Yorkers support euthanasia. Legalizing euthanasia, despite the intentionally softer label of assisted dying, is a grave moral failing. It frames death as a solution to pain or inconvenience. It echoes the chilling logic behind abortion, too, in which innocent babies' lives are taken due to convenience, coercion, or confusion. Both practices reflect a sickening pattern using death to erase the complexities of life. Friends, we stand in the eye of the storm as it relates to God's judgment. We say, God bless America. How can God bless this nation when we are taking the lives of innocent children and now killing the elderly as well, or those who are going through mental health conditions or other conditions such as depression, dementia, or other matters? Let's get over to the Middle East. During his trip to Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, President Trump told the world what exactly or who is in charge, and it's not human authority. Here's what he had to say.
I believe it is God's job to sit in judgment, my job to defend America, and to promote the fundamental interest of stability, prosperity, and peace. That's what I really want to do. I will never hesitate to wield American power if it's necessary to defend the United States or to help defend our allies.
In that statement, as you heard at the beginning, believing it is God's job to sit in judgment, he is the ultimate judge. Western Journal is reporting President Trump launched his Middle East visit by saying Iran needed to make the right decision about its nuclear program because something's going to happen one way or the other. So we'll either do it friendly or we'll do it very unfriendly, the president said amid talks between the two countries that have gone through 4 rounds, and he said that won't be pleasant. That led the top political military nuclear advisor to the Iranian Supreme Leader, Ayatollah Khamenei, to say a deal could be worked out, according to NBC. NBC reported that he told the network that Iran would commit to never making nuclear weapons, getting rid of its stockpiles of highly enriched uranium, which can be weaponized, agree to enrich uranium only to the lower levels needed for civilian use, and allow international inspectors to supervise the process in exchange for the immediate lifting of all economic sanctions on Iran. He also asked if the deal could be signed today if the U.S. met those conditions. He said yes. Washington Times said President Trump said Iran has been presented with a nuclear deal from the U.S., said they have a proposal, but more importantly, they know they have to move quickly or something bad is going to happen. The president made those comments aboard Air Force One while leaving the UAE. On yesterday, Mr. Trump said that Iran and the U.S. are very close to a deal because Iran has sort of agreed to terms, and said that the negotiations are not going to be making any nuclear dust in Iran, and we've been strong. I want them to succeed. I want them to end up being a great country, frankly, but they can't have a nuclear weapon. Meanwhile, we have the Epoch Times reporting that the United States on May 13th sanctioned networks of entities had sold Iranian oil to China and used the proceeds to fund terrorist activities. According to the State Department, the network was using sales to China to fund the development of ballistic missiles, drones, nuclear capabilities, and the activities of terrorist proxies, including the Houthis' attacks on the Red Sea shipping, the U.S. Navy, and also on Israel. Up against a quick break. We'll be back in a minute. You're listening to Crosstalk.
Back to Genesis with Dr. John Morris, geologist and president of the Institute for Creation Research. Dr. Morris, what formed Utah's Great Salt Lake?
Chris, the Great Salt Lake is much more salty than seawater because it has water coming in but no rivers leaving the lake. Whatever dissolved solids come in stay there, and as the water evaporates, the lake increases in solidity. It turns out that Salt Lake is really just a leftover remnant of a much larger lake called Lake Bonneville. When the great flood of Noah's day drained off the continents, in places water ponded and became inland lakes. Most of these lakes have since drained either through evaporation or through catastrophic failure of the natural dams which were holding them in. Lake Bonneville evidently drained northward through the Snake River Canyon within the last few thousand years. Chris, all the evidence fits that back to Genesis truth of Earth history.
To find out more about creation science, visit us on the web at www.icr.org. That's www.icr.org.
You're listening to Crosstalk on the VCY American Network. It's our Friday News Roundup today. Thank you for joining us on the broadcast. Again, friends, we encourage you to pray for the station that brings you Crosstalk, your local Christian station, and get behind and support them. Let them know how grateful you are for this program, keeping you informed on critical issues. We seek to bring to you a number of stories that perhaps you're not hearing in other outlets, certainly not from legacy media. The Times of Israel is reporting, and this really stems from our program of concern yesterday with Usama Dakdak. U.S. President Donald Trump visits the Abrahamic Family House, an interfaith complex in Abu Dhabi, at the tail end of his Middle East tour, reports the Times of Israel. He visited the 3 houses of worship, a mosque, synagogue, and church. As he exited the synagogue, he said, "Amazing." He signed the guest book, asked if he has a message for the people of the UAE. He said, "Just a message of unity. When you look at what we've seen, it's great unity, great faith. They're incredible people with a tremendous leader. He's a friend of mine," he responded. National Review reporting Hamas on Monday released Eden Alexander, the last living American hostage in Gaza, marking a major milestone in the long-running negotiation between Israel, the terror group, and the U.S. that began with terrorists invading Israel, kidnapping hundreds of civilians. Alexander, who holds dual Israeli-American citizenship, was handed over to representatives from the International Committee of the Red Cross, the Israeli military said. The terror group said Sunday it would release the 21-year-old unconditionally after talks with the Trump administration. Alexander's parents traveled from New Jersey to Israel for their son's release. Friends, can I just back up to a story that we did a bit ago on Planned Parenthood? As I'm reading the story about October 7th, what happened in Israel, you know the horrendous nature of what took place on October 7th. Jews slaughtered. And friends, this would be like having another October 7th every day of the year as to what Planned Parenthood is doing. It's outrageous. Back to Israel. Jerusalem Post reporting a missile fired by Houthi terrorists from Yemen intercepted last evening, the IDF announced. Sirens activated from Israel, from Jerusalem to Tel Aviv. Missile fragments landed in the southern Judea and Samaria. 5th time that the Yemen-based terror group has fired a missile at Israel within the past week, one of which fell short and landed in Saudi Arabia. Let's getting back home to what's happening in our capital. The House, this from Just the News, the House Budget Committee today rejected President Trump's budget bill, a major setback to leaders of the GOP-led chamber who have set a July 4th deadline for final passage. The vote was 16-21, with 5 conservative hardliners joining all Democrats and voting against the multi-trillion-dollar legislation, according to NBC News. That's how they framed it. Well, what's the story behind this? I'm going to play for you a clip from Chip Roy. He's one who would not vote for this legislation. He explains why. Let's listen in.
I appreciate my friend from Texas, the chairman, and, there my Democratic colleagues go again, telling things that are not true. The vast majority of Americans will get tax benefits under this bill. It's just simply false to say that that's not true. Hardworking Americans who will benefit from the standard deduction increase. Hardworking Americans that will benefit from child tax credits and lower tax rates. Stop saying things that aren't true. Those things are true. The fact is we have money in here for border to undo the damage of Joe Biden. We have more money in here for the defense to undo the damage of Joe Biden. But we also address Medicaid, and Medicaid spending goes up. Stop lying. Medicaid spending goes up. My colleagues on the other side of the aisle are profoundly unserious when it comes to being real about what's happening with the numbers. I applaud Chairman Arrington. I applaud my colleagues on this side of the aisle for taking a step forward in dealing with the spending problem in this town. But I have to now admonish my colleagues on this side of the aisle. This bill falls profoundly short. It does not do what we say it does with respect to deficits. The fact of the matter is, on the spending, what we're dealing with here on tax cuts and spending, a massive front-loaded deficit increase. That's the truth. That's the truth. Deficits will go up in the first half of the 10-year budget window, and we all know it's true. And we shouldn't do that. We shouldn't say that we're doing something we're not doing. The fact of the matter is, this bill has backloaded savings and has front-loaded spending. Nowhere near the Senate budget top line, by the way. The Senate budget top line of $6.5 trillion, which, by the way, is what we were pre-COVID, inflation adjusted, on interest, on Medicaid, on Medicare and Social Security. And if we would reform Medicaid, we could actually get to the core of the problem. But we refuse to do it. And I'm not going to sit here and say that everything is hunky-dory when this is the budget committee. This is the budget committee. We are supposed to do something to actually result in balanced budgets, but we're not doing it. Look at what happens under deficits. By the way, this chart includes growth. This chart demonstrates economic growth. And right here, what do you see? Baseline, and the orange columns are the deficits under the House budget, assuming growth. Only in Washington are we expected to bet on the come that in 5 years, then everything will work. Then we will solve the problem. We have got to change the direction of this town. And to my colleagues on the other side of the aisle, yes, that means touching Medicaid. It went from $400 billion in 2019 to $600 billion this year. It'll be over $1 trillion in the 2030s. We are making promises that we cannot keep. We do need to reform it. We need to stop giving 7 times as much money to the able-bodied over the vulnerable. Why are we sticking it to the vulnerable population, the disabled and the sick, to give money to single able-bodied male adults? We shouldn't do that. We should reform it. But guess what? That message needs to be delivered to my colleagues on this side of the aisle too. We are writing checks we cannot cash, and our children are going to pay the price. So I am a no on this bill unless serious reforms are made today, tomorrow, Sunday. We're having conversations as we speak, but something needs to change, or you're not going to get my support. I yield back.
Congressman Chip Roy speaking passionately in regard to his objection to this budget reconciliation. Are there good things in this legislation? Absolutely. But concerned about the amount of deficit spending that is continuing on with this. Now, friends, there are scare tactics that are being given to families with special needs individuals in their homes. The scare tactics that Congress is trying to pull special funding away from special needs children in their care. It's not true. They're putting out these scare tactics. And I want to just further air a clip here. This is from the chair, Representative Buddy Carter, Congressman Buddy Carter.
Gentle lady knows perfectly well that that is not true, that it is not kicking 13.7 million people off of Medicaid. And that is simply not true, and the gentle lady knows that. This is nothing more than fear-mongering. It's nothing more than misleading the public. What we are doing here is stabilizing this program. This is a program that I worked in for over 40 years as a pharmacist, and I can assure you it is a program that is needed. It is intended for the most vulnerable in our society, the aged, the blind, the disabled, pregnant mothers, children, those who truly need it. And that's what we're doing. We're making sure that no illegals are going to be on this program. We're making sure that people aren't registered in more than one state. We're making sure that there are going to be work requirements so that able-bodied adults are truly in need of it. That's what we're doing. We're stabilizing this program. To insinuate, to fearmonger that we are trying to kick people off is simply untrue.
Congressman Buddy Carter speaking on that matter. This is a news roundup here on VCY American from the New American. 3 Democratic members of Congress and a Democratic mayor nearly started a riot at an illegal alien detention facility in New Jersey last Friday. He might well be arrested for assaulting federal agents. We're talking about the Newark mayor. Baraka was arrested. Far-left U.S. Representative Bonnie Watson, Coleman, Rob Menendez, LaMonica McIver, and all of New Jersey might well find themselves facing charges. Their arrest and indictment are still on the table. It says a spokesman from the Department of Homeland Security. Also from Newsmax.com, Ed Martin, who will be the Justice Department's new pardon attorney after President Trump pulled his nomination to be the top federal prosecutor for Washington, said Tuesday that he plans to scrutinize pardons that former President Joe Biden issued on his way out of the White House, saying these are big moments and so they have to be able to withstand scrutiny. Biden pardoned his siblings, their spouses in January on the last day in office. He also pardoned Dr. Anthony Fauci, retired General Mark Milley, and members of the House committee that investigated the January 6, 2021 attack on the Capitol. None of them had been charged with any crime. The pardons were designed to guard against possible retribution by President Trump, they report. Well, friends, there have been issues going on in Washington, D.C. as well, a court case, oral arguments, Trump versus Casa, Washington, and New Jersey cases. Justice Clarence Thomas delivered a surgical takedown of the legal rationale for nationwide injunctions. And I just want you to hear it. This is surrounding whether lower courts can issue sweeping injunctions that block federal policies nationwide, even when only a handful of plaintiffs are before the court. Representing the U.S., Solicitor General John Sauer argued that such broad orders violate established legal norms and Supreme Court precedent. Let's listen to part of the oral arguments that happened yesterday.
Injunctions used.
We believe that the best reading of that is what you said in Trump against Hawaii, which is that Wirtz in 1963 was really the first universal injunction. There's a dispute about Perkins against Lucas Oil going back to 1940. And of course, we point to the court's opinion that reversed that universal injunction issued by the D.C. Circuit and said it's profoundly wrong. Now, if you look at the cases that the either party cite, you see a common theme. The cases that we cite, like National Treasury's Employment Union, Perkins against Lucas Oil, Frothingham and Massachusetts against Mellon, going back to Scott against Donald, and all of those are cases where the court considered and addressed the sort of universal, in that case, statewide issue of provision of injunctive relief. So when the court has considered and addressed this, it has consistently said you have to limit the remedy to the plaintiffs who appearing in court and complaining of that remedy.
So we survived until the 1960s without universal injunctions.
That's exactly correct. And in fact, those were very limited, very rare, even in the 1960s. It really exploded in 2007 in our cert petition in Summers against Earth Island Institute. We pointed out that the Ninth Circuit had started doing this in a whole bunch of cases involving environmental claims.
Friends, we're in a very important time. I mean, over the next 6 weeks, we're going to see a number of cases heard this term by the U.S. Supreme Court, those decisions being released. Normally by the very end of their term, June 30th, the end of their term, before they have their summer recess, and oral arguments starting back up in October once again. But certainly be in prayer for this U.S. Supreme Court. So many issues at stake before this court. Coming to us from CBN, on Wednesday, the FAA met with 6 major airlines to discuss the ongoing delays at Newark Liberty International Airport. The FAA proposes reducing flights to 68 per hour. That's down from more than 80. United has already agreed to 35 flights a day, to cut 35 flights, I should say. It all comes after several snafus at Newark, 4 incidents in the last 2 weeks, including a radar outage just days ago that left air traffic controllers unable to communicate with planes for 90 seconds. Meanwhile, the Transportation Secretary, Sean Duffy, and the Trump administration are making the case that America's air traffic control system needs an overhaul. We used radar from the 1970s, Duffy said. He made his pitch to Congress on Wednesday, asking lawmakers for billions of dollars to build a brand new state-of-the-art system. I believe, wasn't it also Denver that just had some issues? And now we find out that the FAA just confirmed that a government failure at the Pentagon in wake of the deadly crash, that there's a key hotline between Reagan National Airport and the Pentagon. The line has been down since March of 2022. We'll be back in just a minute. You're listening to Crosstalk on the VCY American Network.
Few Americans know that in 1787, the U.S. Constitution prohibited a direct federal tax. In 1862, a revenue tax went into effect to finance the Union during the Civil War. In 1895, the Supreme Court decided an income tax was unconstitutional. In 1913, Woodrow Wilson thought that tariffs caused war, so he worked to replace them with an income tax. So how did we get to where we are today? In the book, The Interesting History of the Income Tax, author William Federer reveals that America's founders were not fond of taxes. Bill walks us through many years of history, showing us how the IRS code went from 14 pages in 1913 to many volumes today. The Interesting History of Income Tax, available for a donation of $20 to VCY America. Call 1-800-729-9829.
You're listening to Crosstalk on VCY America, a news roundup day here today, and Lord willing, we'll have a time for you to share your thoughts on these stories when the phone lines are opened. We were just talking about New Jersey and certainly what's happening there at the Newark Airport, the dilapidated air traffic control system. And then SRN News also reports today, as many other media outlets, about the New Jersey transit train engineers going on strike, leaving train terminals quiet for the rush hour today. An estimated 350,000 commuters in New Jersey, New York City to seek other means to reach their destinations or consider staying home. Groups of picketers gathered in front of transit headquarters in Newark, and certainly the matter will continue to see what's going to unfold. Friday's rail commute into New York from New Jersey, typically the lightest of the week. But if this continues on, it'll be a different scenario come the first of the week. National Review reporting FBI Director Kash Patel today announced plans to move the Bureau of the FBI out of its headquarters in D.C. As part of the plan to vacate its headquarters in the J. Edgar Hoover building, the Bureau will transfer 1,500 employees to varying locations nationwide. The FBI director noted the agency has 11,000 FBI employees in the 50-mile radius around D.C. He said it's leaving the Hoover building because this building is unsafe for our workforce, Patel said during his appearance on Fox News. He said, we want the American men and women to know if we're going to come to work at the premier law enforcement agency in the world, that we're going to give you a building that's commensurate with that, and that's not this place. He didn't elaborate further on that matter. Okay, here we go. Freedom from Religion Foundation calling on the Department of Defense to halt plans for an official Christian prayer meeting that Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth is reportedly organizing. They contacted Hegseth after a Christian pastor revealed on a podcast he was invited to lead the inaugural Secretary's prayer meeting at the Pentagon. FFRF's letter to Hegseth claims a major constitutional concern, and they say by holding an official Christian prayer meeting, the department sends a message to non-adherents that they are outsiders. Interesting. Well, the Washington Times reporting the Pentagon has drafted an initial plan for the President Trump's Golden Dome missile defense system, just days after defense officials met with politicians on Capitol Hill to discuss concerns. The Pentagon spokesman Sean Parnell added that senior defense officials, including Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth, are presenting options to the president for approval, and that a more detailed plan will be announced in the coming days. Friends, this is a wake-up call to what's happening not only in one state, but to the nation as a whole. This is going on in the state of Colorado. Prophecy Newswatch is reporting of Camp Idrahaji. Now, that's short for I'd Rather Have Jesus. Idrahaji, a beloved Christian institution in Colorado, a legacy stretching back to 1948, is under siege, not by secular activists from the outside, but by the very government that's supposed to protect religious freedom. The camp, grounded in the timeless truth that God created humanity male and female, is being told that it must surrender that belief in order to operate. The state has decreed that boys who claim to be girls must be allowed to share showers, sleeping spaces, and dressing areas with girls, even in a setting rooted in the Word of God. This is not compassion. This is not tolerance. This is tyranny disguised as inclusivity, reports Prophecy Newswatch. Camp Hydrahaji serves children between the ages of 6 and 17, offering them a powerful summer experience rooted in the gospel. Each year, between 2,500 and 3,000 children attend these camps, many of them encountering the message of Christ for the first time. At the heart of the spiritual and legal showdown is a rule issued by Colorado's Department of Early Childhood, mandating that all licensed children's resident camps must allow individuals access to sex-separated facilities based not on their biological sex, but on their self-declared gender identity. Camp Hydrahaji requested a religious exemption. That request denied. So the camp, with the backing of Alliance Defending Freedom, filed a federal lawsuit on May 13th asserting that Colorado's demand violates their constitutional rights. Friends, this is not only going to be happening in camps, it's going to be happening in your local church settings as well. It is time we wake up to the radical nature of what's going on. Again, friends, as I quoted earlier, the heart is deceitful above all things, desperately wicked. Who can know it? Okay, let's go to Washington, D.C., lifesitenews.com, and yet another example of moral degradation. The left-wing mayor of Washington, D.C. participated in a ribbon-cutting ceremony at a home for LGBT seniors this past week. Mary's House for Older Adults was opened last Thursday, May 8th. It's the first LGBT residence for seniors in D.C., providing lodging for 15 persons, single-occupancy rooms, 5,000 square feet reserved for communal living. And the site declares it's obtained a $1.2 million in funding from the District of Columbia to build the property. While specific numbers for living spaces for LGBT seniors is not entirely clear, map of care has stated that roughly 1,500 such complexes exist across the country. Let's go to Florida now. The Washington Stand. The Naples Pride organization was told that you can't host a drag show near a children's playground, so instead they dragged the city to court. So Naples Pride, there's a children's playground in Naples. That's where this was designed to be held. In April, CBN reported that the Naples City Council voted 5-2 to move the proposed drag show indoors away from the park, which is frequented by children, and to restrict the event to adults only. But no, they took it to court, and according to Judge John Steele, a Clinton appointee, the city asked the event to be moved inside with age limits was likely unconstitutional. In his Monday ruling, Steele argued that drag performances are symbolic conduct and inherently expressive, thus protected as free speech under the First Amendment. With his decision, Steele is allowing the drag show to take place near the playground. Pacific Lutheran University. According to CampusReform.com, hosting a queer prom for those as young as 14 years of age. Pacific Lutheran University, located in Tacoma, Washington, hosted a queer prom May 10th in collaboration with a local queer youth organization. The event serves as an annual gathering intended for youth as young as 14 to come experience queer joy and engage with community resources. The sign-up sheet for the dance asked attendees to list information including personal pronouns and offered 8 specific options for sexual orientation and 7 different genders to choose from. Oasis Queer Prom is for LGBTQ plus and allied youth, ages 14 to 24 years of age. The registration form read, the event even advertised free HIV testing. While the dance was held at PLU's campus, the Oasis Youth Center was the primary organizer of the event. The organization's About Us page states that it transforms the lives of queer and questioning youth by creating a safe place to learn, connect, and thrive, while also providing the support necessary for making meaningful and healthy life choices. Amazing. Okay, here's a few good news stories. Newly enacted Tennessee law prohibits schools from punishing employees and teachers for referring to trans-identified students by their given name and pronouns, as public school staff in other states have faced professional repercussions for declining to use trans-identified students' preferred names and pronouns. Tennessee's Republican Governor Bill Lee signed into law last Friday the legislation, and it declares that students, teachers, employees, or contractors who work with public schools are not required to use the preferred name of a student, teacher, employee, or contractor of a public school if the individual's preferred name is not the individual's legal name or a derivative thereof. It also prohibits public school employees and students from having to use the preferred pronoun of a student, teacher, employee, or contractor of the public school if the individual's preferred pronoun is not consistent with their individual sex. Also, out of West Virginia, Washington Stand reports, West Virginia has enacted new legislation that substantially improves its protections for minors from gender transition procedures. West Virginia's Senate Bill 299 added enforcement mechanisms to existing law, authorizing medical licensing boards to revoke the license of a physician who provides either gender reassignment surgery or gender-altering medication to a person under the age of 18. It also allows the Attorney General or any injured minor or the minor's parents to file a civil lawsuit against a practitioner. And then we also have here from Fox News, the Justice Department is moving funds formerly granted to groups supporting transgender ideology and diversity, equity, inclusion, and transferring those funds over to law enforcement. A couple other stories here today before we open lines. This from mychristiandaily.com. Pastor Oji, don't know the really pronunciation, it's O-J-I-H, and several other Christians have been captured by Islamists, bound and left alone to contemplate their faith under the scorching heat of Nigeria's sun. They were told to stand and decide their fate. If you want to live for Christ, go to this side, his captor said, jerking his hand toward a man dressed in white with a sword who stood apart from the captives. If you want to go for Muhammad, remain where you are. Pastor Oji led the way for those who would stand for Christ with a song of praise coming from his lips. He kneeled in front of his executioner, was given one last chance. His executioner raised his sword and asked him if he wanted to live as a Muslim or die as a Christian. The husband and father of four turned to his companions and spoke his last words. If you survive, tell my family that I died well and am living with Christ. And if we all die, we know that we died for the Lord. If you're like most people, when you read accounts like this and these early Christians, you are struck by their courage and are probably asking, could I do what they did? Could I die as a faithful witness with a sword over my neck as they had? May God give us such grace at such a time. But friends, there are many who are being persecuted for their faith. We just covered this recently on Crosstalk. And again, bring this matter to your attention. A story here that is troubling from IJR.com and the Daily Caller News Foundation. Officials are reportedly reassessing the risk posed by Chinese-made devices found in solar panels that are capable of damaging the energy infrastructure, destabilizing the power grid, and triggering widespread blackouts. Over the past 9 months, rogue communication devices not listed in product documents were found in solar power inverters and batteries from several Chinese suppliers, according to sources familiar with the matter who spoke with Reuters. The undocumented devices were found after U.S. experts disassembled the renewable energy equipment to check for security issues. The communication devices were reportedly found in power inverters that are used to connect solar panels and wind turbines to the power grid and are often produced in China. They also found in electric vehicle chargers, batteries, and heat pumps. Undocumented cellular radios were also found in Chinese-manufactured batteries, according to the publication. If the rogue communication devices found in the inverters are used to circumnavigate firewalls and change the settings or turn off inverters remotely, this could destabilize power grids, damage energy technology, and prompt blackouts, according to experts who spoke with Reuters. That effectively means there is a built-in way to physically destroy the grid, one of the sources told the publication. Friends, that's why President Trump is saying manufacturing needs to be brought back in within the U.S. borders. We'll be back in just a minute. Let's open our phone lines today. If you'd like to comment on these or other current event stories, give us a call. 800-733-9829. 800-733-9829.
For the Worldview Report, I'm Brandon House. Our website's worldviewreport.com. The U.S. Department of Justice is finally opening an investigation into the Muslim development of Plano, Texas, known as EPIC. As many of the viewers and listeners know, I have been talking about Yasser Qadhi and warning about him since around 2010, 11, 12, somewhere in there, and then big time in 2017. And we've been warning about this EPIC compound and that it will basically implement Sharia, Islamic law, discriminate against non-Muslims. Where is the fair housing authorities? The governor of Texas wanted to put out a lot of tweets, but do nothing. And now, praise the Lord, President Donald Trump's DOJ is investigating this Sharia compound known as EPIC. And this needs to be the first of many. And I'm going to let you in a little secret. We sent an undercover agent in to investigate, and we'll be doing a report soon. I'm Brandon House for Worldview Report.
You're listening to Crosstalk on VCY America, and if you'd like to comment on these or other current event stories, our number 800-733-9829. Lines are filled right now. By the way, Daily Wire 2 telling of a 19-year-old man arrested Tuesday, charged with planning a mass shooting at a U.S. military base in Warren, Michigan, on behalf of ISIS. This is Ammar Abdulaminejad Mohammed Sayed told two undercover law enforcement agents he formulated a plan to attack the U.S. Army's tank, automotive, and armaments command facility in Warren. Let's go to the phone lines and hear what you have to say on these matters today. We're going to begin with Joe in Phoenix, Arizona. Joe, you're on the air.
I just wanted to comment about the 8647 that you spoke about when you first opened with James Comey.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think it was a little bit of mix-up in there, because 86, from my understanding, I worked, that's more so of a term used at bars for kicking somebody out and not allowing them back in.
Yeah, getting rid of that person.
I think you might have been confused with 187, which is a murder code.
No, it's not a code. No, it's not. We're referring to the murder code and police call. But the 86 something is to get rid of it. I mean, you can find that online here as well. You want 86, you want to get rid of it. And
not kill, but I think you use murder or kill, which is something completely different from kicking something out and not allowing it back.
Well, sometimes it is meant in the matter to murder or to kill, and that's why there's controversy over this issue, and that's why the FBI is investigating this, and that's why the Department of Justice is involved.
Okay, because I've never heard it used in murder either, so I've only heard it used at bars and stores.
Yeah,
where
get rid
they
of,
want to ban someone.
Get rid of, dispose of. Throw it out.
Not disposed. It's not disposed. That leads to that's why we get the murder and the kill and the offing, and I think that's pushing it.
Well, okay. Well, I think James Comey was pushing it too. Thank you, Mark in Monroe, Wisconsin. You're on the air.
Hey, Jim. I say this with. Dripping with sarcasm. Leave it to James Comey for coming up with a new shell game.
Uh-huh.
No reasonable prosecutor would indict a former FBI director for not knowing simple math, 8647, any more than Hillary Clinton knows how to use bleach and a hammer to destroy emails. That's my comment.
Thank you, Mark. Let's go to Linda next in Rochester. You're on the air.
Yes, I was calling about legislation that is in the Wisconsin legislature right now. The AB 43 was passed on May 13th, which is regarding pharmacists writing prescriptions for just about anybody to just get abortion pills.
Yep.
And so that has gone on to the Senate, and it's Senate Bill 42. So I was hoping people would call their senators and ask them to please vote no on that. But also,
before you go on for a moment, it's what's troubling is that this got a lot of Republican sponsorship to it, and to allow pharmacists.
The thing. There were 87 ayes and 10 noes.
Yeah,
pretty pathetic. And we're going to be talking to Voss about this in his upcoming listening sessions next week.
Thank you, Linda.
You're welcome.
Appreciate your call. Our number 800-733-9829. Alice in Arkansas, you're on the air.
Oh, thank you for taking my call. Again, my heart is aching. You know, in the Bible, God told, I thought it was Joshua, that he couldn't go in and take out the land, the promised land, until the cup of iniquity of those inhabitants was full. I have a question. How is America's cup of iniquity becoming? From what you told me, we're going farther and farther away from God's violence of abortion and the acceptance of the awful LGBTQ, and God knows the abominable that can happen after that if we don't see a revival. Yeah. I agree with Jack Dot that we are going to see judgment, and it may come in the form of the Muslim inhabitants of this nation. Now, don't get me wrong. Jesus Christ died once for all, Muslims included. But only Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life. God pity America as well as have mercy.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Alice. Indeed, I couldn't agree more with you here today. Yeah, the 86-something means to remove it, get rid of it. Can also mean reject it. You can take many different terms of familiar with it to get rid of something. And so you take it where you want to, but it is such, friends, not just my interpretation. I mean, as such, it's gotten the attention of the FBI, Department of Homeland Security, Secret Service, and investigating further into this. By the way, from the center square, a federal grand jury has indicted the Wisconsin judge Tuesday. The charges being helping shield a person illegally in the country from federal immigration officials at the Milwaukee County Courthouse. Federal prosecutors charged Judge Hannah Dugan with obstruction of a federal proceeding and concealing an individual to prevent discovery or arrest. The obstruction charge could result in up to $100,000 fined and a year in prison. The second concealment charge can also result in up to 5 years in prison and a $250,000 fine there as well. And Judge Dugan did plead not guilty yesterday to charges that she helped an illegal immigrant evade federal authorities. Well, friends, I want to leave you with this here today from KSLA. Thousands of members of law enforcement descended on the west front of the U.S. Capitol Thursday to honor fallen officers during the annual National Peace Officers Memorial Service. The service, now in its 44th year, has been the cornerstone ceremony of National Police Week that consists of remembering services across the nation's capital that pay tribute to the local, state, and federal officers who died in the line of duty. Vice President Vance promised the officers would not be forgotten. The names of 232 officers who were killed while serving their communities were read aloud during the service. And don't forget tomorrow, Armed Forces Day, Army Day, Navy Day, Air Force Day. Bill Federer said were combined in 1949 to be Armed Forces Day, celebrated. President Nixon remarked on Armed Forces Day in 1973. He said, men and women who wear the uniform of our country are supposed to salute the Commander-in-Chief, but on this day, I, as your Commander-in-Chief, salute you, each and every American who serves in our Army, our Navy, our Air Force, our Marine Corps, and our Coast Guard. We owe you a debt of gratitude we can never fully repay. Happy Armed Forces Day this year, Saturday, May 17th. Well, friends, our time is gone here today on Crosstalk. Thank you for joining us not only today, but all this week. The Lord's Day is coming. Trust you'll be in a Bible-believing, Bible-teaching local church. Thanks for listening.
You've been listening to Crosstalk via satellite and the internet from VCY America. Views expressed may or may not be those of this station. For a CD of today's program, send a donation of $6 or more to VCY Tape Ministry, 3434 West Kilbourne Avenue, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, 53208, or download by RSS or podcast from crosstalkamerica.com. And join us again for Crosstalk.